Our next writer is Carolyn Cismoski. Carolyn found the spark to delve into the agricultural life in 2009. She apprenticed under seed saver extraordinaire Andrea Berry of Hope Seeds in the Canadian Maritimes, where she learned the intricacies of farming and seed saving. From there, Carolyn found a place in the California fields under the tutelage of noted seed saver Suzanne Ashworth. With a couple of years of farming under her belt, she returned to the land of Lincoln in 2011, where she gained experience at Mint Creek Farm, working with animals and coordinating farm events while running 3-Plaid with an iron fist of love. I have to ask Joe about that later. 2015 will be Carolyn's 7th season farming. And fortunately for us here at Waterline, apparently she also occasionally writes stuff. So please, Carolyn, come on up.
Can you hear me? I can't claim to be a writer, but I do feel honored to be here with you all. This particular essay is the second part of a 2-part series that we did mainly for our members to let them know. Sometimes we'll highlight certain crops. This one in particular was head lettuce, so the first part was more about why we liked it, and then this part that I'm sharing with you today explains why we only grow it certain parts of the season. We don't grow it all year or all summer long. So, if you've read Barbara Kingsolver's Animal Vegetable Miracle, you'll likely recall hearing the tale of the early 20th century California entrepreneurs who plopped some lettuce and artichokes onto boxcars, packed them with ice, and rolled it all eastward. This midwinter lettuce chomping that only the wealthy could afford laid the groundwork for the now commonplace system of moving produce across country and worldwide. Year-long consumption of lettuce, and in turn other types of produce, became affordable and routine with the development of crops bred for cross-country travel, and shortly thereafter with the arrival of the interstate. The major lettuce variety of the time, Great Lakes iceberg, dominated American plates specifically because it was bred to hold up well on a long journey eastward, and was advertised and marketed to families as the greatest thing since sliced bread. There were heavy prices to pay for this convenience that went mostly unforeseen in the mid to late 20th century. First, the common knowledge that our grandparents and great-grandparents held, like which crops grew best during which season, almost completely disappeared from our collective consciousness. Over a fairly short period of time, we forgot the seasonality of lettuce, among other crops, and expected to see it on our plates year-round. Second, we lost a hell of a lot of diversity in our food system. Farmers now had to grow what the market demanded, and in the process stopped growing the myriad varieties that were once enjoyed locally. Many heirlooms took a hit or were lost forever. Third, and perhaps most devastating of all, came the destruction of our landscape. Once peppered with local farms, our land now turned into immense swaths of acreage filled with very little assortment. To keep up with market demand, farmers were persuaded to increase production of only a handful of crops to most of their acres. Part and parcel of this Faustian bargain was trading their traditional organic practices for pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, and synthetic fertilizers. The bigger the acreage, the greater the need for these inputs. In a brief moment in time, the former millennia-long focus of building healthy soil and thereby producing healthy, diverse crops now gave way to insanely huge production of a select few crops, and with it, a complete neglect of the soil. Soil has been rendered basically dead across our country due to farming practices that prioritize human-made inputs, like petroleum-based fertilizers, over that of nature. Sure, plants can grow with the addition of synthetic fertilizers, but the nourishment is superficial and the soil is left entirely spent at the end of the year. The methods of agriculture which dominate the globe these days represent nothing more than an empty system that ultimately leads to indelible loss under a thin veil of progress. Of course, our world is very different from that of the not so long ago, when small farms literally sustained small communities and people preserved food to nourish their families through the winter. Although this type of living is still desirable for some, it is no longer necessary for most. However, as long as people are backing local small farms, the world is better for it. Let's bring it back to lettuce. What was once a dinnerscape, always dominated by Great Lakes iceberg, is now a plethora of colors and flavors shared by umpteen varieties offered at local farmers markets and through CSA programs. From old heirlooms to newly bred varieties, your local small farms are doing their part to increase the diversity of their fields and the human palate. For some years now, small farms have been taking on the fight to regain traditional agricultural knowledge, and we are dedicating ourselves to the diversity and health of our land and food system. We strive, along with many other small farms across the country, to pull away that thin veil of progress promised by corporate monoculture pushers. We aren't pleased with how the dominant agricultural paradigm affects the human and environmental health of our country and world, and we aim to do better. As bridges between environmental and public health, every small farm has its own righteous mission. We small farmers are generally united, knowing we each have our own particular role in the greater fight to change the current beastly system that still reigns supreme. To that end, every CSA program and market farm is suitable for different people and their own unique preferences. The system can only work if a diversity of options is offered, even within the local food movement. We believe in the pursuits of our fellow farmers and beckon folks to choose to support one that utterly suits their needs. Supporting any one of us is supporting the whole movement. In the case of our small farm, in addition to CSA, our main goal is to increase our knowledge of seed saving, taking part in the age-old skill of saving a bit of the past for the health of the future. This health of which we speak depends on the fostering and preservation of genetic diversity in our food system. Think of the potato famine in the late 19th century Ireland. Limiting species and varieties can cause devastation on many levels. We hope to join countless other seed savers worldwide to help preserve varieties so that our food system can be healthier for it. King Salver points out the ill health of our food system by citing Vandana Shiva, world-renowned crop ecologist, who says that the majority of our food for the last few decades has come from only 8 plant species. This stands in direct contrast to the diverse food system our ancestors built over many thousands of years, where according to Shiva, some 80,000 plant species were consumed. Though our role may be small, taking part in the rediversification of our food system lies at the foundation of our mission and therefore our farming methods. Back to lettuce we go. Lettuce is the key example we're using to illustrate the mission of our farm, and on a larger scale, the small farm revolution of which we're taking part. We're using it as a symbol since, despite having a tremendous amount of variety of lettuce to choose from these days, thanks to small farmers, the remnants of old Great Lakes iceberg can still be felt, and that lettuce is still consumed year-round by most of us. It's become habitual. We crave the local and fresh in the spring through fall, and in winter we settle for shipments from out west. Again, we understand ours is a different world than in the recent past. Where people once preserved food to sustain themselves through the winter out of necessity, we now seek nourishment from afar out of a different necessity, because it's what our system and way of life demand. Even the most die-hard locavores make exceptions, from bananas to coffee to avocados to, you guessed it, lettuce. So believe me, we're not knocking it. We here at 3 Plaid make plenty of exceptions ourselves. We're simply using lettuce as a platform, one tiny example, to talk about why we grow the way we do, in contrast to that of industrial ag. It's more of an illustration of how we do things rather than a good, old-fashioned soapbox scolding. Lettuce is by nature a cool weather crop. As soon as temperatures begin to warm, the lettuce plant takes its cue and starts to form a bitter, milky white substance throughout its stems and leaves. This is an evolutionary response to keep predators from eating the plant as it attempts to reproduce, known as bolting. Anyone who has tasted a head of lettuce as it's starting to bolt knows the bitterness of which we speak. Breeding techniques have led to longer lettuce eating season on many small farms. Lots of people like that, and we think it's pretty great to an extent as well. However, along with our desire to become seed savers, comes our desire to take part in the seed-saving custom of growing crops in their preferred seasons and observing them as they go to seed. There are perks to this. Take lettuce. Its flavor is best in the cooler months. It makes sense that plants evolve to taste best at certain points of the season. We humans selected them over millennia, paying attention to when they grew healthiest and when they had optimal flavor, and we strive to follow in that tradition. Part of the seed-saving tradition is selecting for crops that have desired traits. And lettuce that lasts a bit longer in the heat is all right by us. All types of natural breeding techniques lead to diversity that is necessary in our food system. However, we are primarily interested in learning about crops and why they inherently do what they do. While we may grow lettuce that can withstand more heat, it will still succumb to summer temperatures at some point. And so we've come up with a 12-week offering of lettuce that is grown to be harvested during its peak of flavor, 6 weeks in the spring and 6 weeks in the fall. For reasons listed above, it makes sense our CSA might be a little different since we have a dual aim to also save seeds. And we think that's okay. Our members are the types who might want to go on this particular food adventure with us, just like the members of other farms are interested in participating in the food adventures of their racking farmers. It's what makes this awesome small farm movement gain strength. As our farm grows, we'll continue to strive to offer as much abundance per crop as we can muster for our members. Hopefully one year we will have a large enough greenhouse to help us extend our cool weather production, allowing us to offer lettuce earlier in the spring and later in the fall. But we'll cross that season extension bridge when we get to it. For now, our eyes are on the 12-week prize, and that's the long rather than the short of it.
Thank you, Carolyn. I think anyone that can work Faust and lettuce in the same work can consider themselves a writer. I think you're there. So.